Transportation, but before we do that, could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good morning, everyone. Just to kind of give everyone a kind of a status, Representative Chairman Walsh will not be here this morning, so I'll be running the hearing. So he'll be here after lunch. So this should be a fun time this morning. So with that, let's start off with our first bill, HB249, allowing bicycles to treat stop signs as yield signs and stoplights as stop signs. And the chair would like to recognize Representative Miller, who is the prime sponsor of the bill. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. And thank you all for the opportunity to introduce HB 249 here today. HB 249 is an excellent opportunity for. Is there a problem?
Representative Miller, can you just introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your
Yes.
name and who you represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. Representative Seth Miller, Stratford 21, representing Dover. HB 249 gives us an excellent opportunity to address two major traffic challenges, safety and traffic flow on the streets of New Hampshire. And best of all, it lets us do it for free. We can improve both of those things at no cost to the Grand Estate. The idea of what's known as a safety stop first was legislated in 1982 in Idaho. It was known as Idaho Stop as a result of that, and it allows for bicyclists to treat a stop sign as a yield sign. In Idaho, they saw a 14.5% drop in injuries as a result of enacting this law 40 years ago, and the numbers have stayed low since. More recently, Delaware introduced what they call the Delaware Yield. I'm worried I didn't come up with a cool New Hampshire-related acronym or nickname for this, but we'll work on that maybe as an amendment. Delaware has the Delaware Yield in 2017. Research from the NHSTA or data from the NHSTA and other resources shows that they had a 23% drop in accidents at stop sign intersections over the 30 months following that compared to the 30 months prior. There is real data across multiple states that have done this that shows it is massively safer for cyclists. I will point out that most importantly, two things. One, it is still optional. Cyclists who want to stop or need to stop or should stop will stop, or at least should. And you still must yield. This is not that you just get a green light at any stop sign. It is a yield sign. You are still expected to pay attention to the laws of the road and yield to crossing traffic where appropriate. The main focus here is keeping cyclists moving even at very low speeds. And for some of you who may not have ridden a bike in a while, but I'd like to think we all did at some point, at least as a kid, that first few seconds getting off the ground when you pick your foot up and you start moving forward, you're wobbly. You're moving at 1 or 2 miles an hour. That wobble there, it's a slower portion of the ride. You're much less safe. You're much less in control. Once you get moving, you get a couple miles per hour under you, you're rolling. That's where you have the balance. That's where you have control of your bicycle. And so what this bill does is by making it a yield sign, you maintain that speed. You don't necessarily have to drop below the 3 to 5 miles an hour and get into that wobble state on your bike, unless, of course, cross traffic or other reasons that you need to actually stop while you're yielding. The other thing that it does is helps traffic flow. And it's important to note that because the cyclist is not coming to a full stop, they move through the intersection more quickly. Again, a car, anything motorized, 0 to 5 miles an hour is pretty easy. You tap the pedal, you move. A cyclist, it's especially if you're on a heavier bike with cargo in it or things like that, you're self-powered. You have to get that moving up to the 3 to 5 miles an hour to get things moving so that the car behind you can roll to the stop sign, perform its stop, and then move forward. Again, by moving the bicycle through that intersection more quickly, the cars behind it can also flow more quickly. So it's a smoother flow of traffic for vehicles as well. And then one other thing I will point out, I know we did have a hearing about lane filtering and motorcycles recently, and we have had some discussion about this type of thing in the past couple weeks. has substantial differences from the lane filtering approach. Most notably, cyclists are not weaving between the cars to get up to the front of traffic. They're still within their step, sort of their cycle of how things flow. It's just a matter of when they get there, they can move through the intersection more quickly and safely for everybody. With that, I will note that I think everybody has received emails at least 2 or 3 times with the NHSTA research data on it. If you haven't, I will forward you a copy. I chose not to print 30 copies of it because I didn't think we need them, but if anyone wants a hard copy, let me know. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions from you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Representative Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Miller, for taking the question. The only thing I see that's different in here from regular moving traffic is on line 21. It says a left-hand turn onto a one-way highway may be made on a red light after stopping and yielding to other traffic. Could you explain why you put that in there? Thank you.
Yeah, I should probably have a copy of this in front of me to make sure I get it right. But I believe that's from the stop. Is that a red light? Yeah. So I should note there's 2 halves of the Idaho Stop is considered a stop light, a stop sign situation. There's also the treating a red light as a stop sign. That goes back to the idea that, again, when yielding appropriately, a bicycle often doesn't have the weight or magnetic signature to trigger a lane detection signal. So if you're at a left turn lane, oftentimes those have the little wires in the ground, or I know in New Hampshire we use the cameras now for a lot of those things. But if you don't trigger that, the idea is you can sit and wait and wait and wait, and you could theoretically be stuck there forever until a car comes up behind you to help turn that signal for you. So again, this allows for, when safe, to be able to make that left turn onto the road. I believe. You want to follow up with?
Follow up?
Yeah.
So I do recall a bill similar to that for motorcyclists, and I believe DOT testified that a red light, the longest you're ever going to sit at a red light is 120 seconds. Is that still correct? No, they did.
Yes.
Did you? I mean, I guess I'd ask DOT.
Well, I know DOT is going to be speaking later. We
Okay.
can have them clarify
I'll ask
that.
that question then. Thank you.
You got a hint of what you're going to get. Congratulations.
Representative Pataro?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. Are you a cyclist?
Yes.
Okay, follow up.
Follow up?
I imagine within the cycling community there are different levels of skill. In one sense, you have hobbyists, and in another sense, you have the people with the gear and the shoes that plug into the pedals.
Yep.
Right. Would you say that bicyclists at all levels are in favor of this bill?
No. Like anything else, I think there's a variety of opinions on the bill and where the law should be. Again, I will remind you that, as I mentioned in my testimony, there is no requirement that a cyclist roll through a stop sign if this is enacted. You still can stop. You are encouraged to act and behave in a way that is considered safe both for you and the other traffic around you. And so if you are comfortable stopping a full stop there, that is completely normal.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chair, can I ask one more question?
Follow up?
Okay. The language added in this bill talks about not just bicycles, but human-powered vehicles and electric bicycles. Could you elaborate on what those mean, what those are?
Under New Hampshire law, electric bicycle is a specific classification of bicycle and is treated almost universally the same as a manual powered bicycle. And so that inclusion here is to make sure that it's clear that it applies to both of those categories. And so there's a whole section of the RSA about electric bikes and notes that they are basically bikes. Human powered vehicles could be other things that are not the traditional 2 wheels with a frame in between, a trike that is wheel powered or electric, but is more like a bicycle than anything else. There's those cool ski things that you sort of push your pedals on that moves, but it's sort of it's those types of vehicles. And again, that is that was included based on best practices from other states that have done similar things to make sure we are recognizing the types of vehicles that we would expect to be able to take advantage of this law.
Excellent answer. Thank you very much.
Representative Hill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like any of these changes, my concern is not knowing what, when I come to an intersection and traffic is stopped on either side, I don't know, I need to know what those people are going to do. Here, it sounds like I would not know what that bicyclist is going to do, whether, because it's voluntary, whether they are going to continue on and say that they are not yielding, they're going through the stop sign, or whether they are stopping. So how can you speak to the uncertainty of the person that is coming to that intersection and seeing bicyclists approaching and not knowing what the bicyclist plans to do?
Sure. I am not in the brain of all those bicyclists, so I will speak to it from, or of all the drivers. But my understanding, my expectation would be that when I am approaching an intersection and a cyclist is approaching from the other side, and let's assume we both have stop signs, or it's a four-way stop, something of that nature, the cyclists would still respect the fact that they have to yield if there's cross traffic, and would otherwise apply the sort of rules of who has right of way when multiple vehicles approach a stop at the same time. So if I am to your right on a bicycle and you are coming up and we both get there at the same time, I would have right of way whether I came to a full stop or treated that stop sign as a yield, because that is what the rules of the road say. If you are to my right and we are coming up, you have the right of way, and as specified in the law, I am obligated to yield to you as we approach at the same time, and that sucks for me because I lose my momentum and have to stop and go through, the wobble phase and all those other things again. But I would expect that that is how the law is written. That is how it continues to be written with this amendment or this alteration of the law, and that's how it would be adhered to.
Representative Geisen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Miller, taking the question. So, yeah, I've reviewed a lot of laws similar to this in the motorcycle world, the left turn on red, the lane filtering, etc. And all of those laws specifically state somewhere that the operator that is doing something non-standard is liable for damages for their own safety, and establishes that this new code of law does not change the laws of right-of-way. I don't see anything with regards to liability in this, and that concerns me. Do you know if that's covered under another code of law, or what your answer to that is, sir?
Thank you for the question. I do not know if that's covered specifically elsewhere on the laws. I don't believe that there is specific mention of who has liability when a cyclist is on the road generally, other than they are obligated to respect the laws of the road. And so I'm going to say a terrible thing. I would assume, terrible mistake to make, that if this is the law and I would say this makes it so that it's non-standard in that bikes are treated differently than motor vehicles, but it is standard in that it is the law. And so a cyclist who does not yield when they should is still liable, just as if they ran a stop sign today and should have yielded. Is that fair? And I will offer, if we discover that it needs more and an amendment that adds that line to it would make you feel more comfortable, I'd be happy to entertain that, and we can talk about that in a bit.
Representative Emble?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Miller. So I'm glad you mentioned the lane filtering bill that we recently discussed. And if I remember correctly, it was overwhelmingly ITL in this committee because it was creating a special class of vehicle with their own laws. And we felt that people in general were not used to a special class of vehicles with special laws that they could do that nobody else could do. And so the committee voted ITL on it. So how is this bill not creating a special class of vehicles that get to operate by their own laws that everybody else has not been trained in as to how they're going to operate?
Thank you for the question. I can't speak to. I agree that we all ITL'd. We voted overwhelmingly to ITL the lane filtering bill. I'm not sure the reasoning all of us chose. But taking into to your point of different types of rules for different types of vehicles, there are different rules for different types of vehicles. We all agree on many of them, and it behaves similarly. But how cyclists have to behave in a lane and where they're allowed to ride and things like that are different than motor vehicles. So there are already differences in how motor vehicles and cyclists are treated on the roads and how they're expected to behave in certain scenarios. So I understand the concern that, oh gosh, I didn't know that bike was going to roll through that stop sign. With the exception of the scenario where you are a vehicle behind that bicycle and you get to the stop sign faster, my expectation is you would never experience that, because otherwise you are cross traffic and the bicyclist is still going to yield to you. So yes, there's a situation where they are operating differently. That is on purpose because there is value in giving them the ability to operate differently, both for safety and for traffic flow. And the people who will notice it, the only notice they should have is the advantage they get of moving through traffic more quickly.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Not seeing any. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Chair now like to recognize Michael Frank, who's representing himself, who supports the bill, who's asking for